your beds many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom?
And welcome to Anti-Tyranny News Radio here on UCY.tv. Thank you for joining me this evening. Some of the news we'll get into, White House looking to creep into 401ks. Also, most Americans are slaves and they don't know it. That coming out of Zero Hedge. We'll get into those. I have one that I do want to kind of cover. Let me get to it here. Maybe sometime today. Okay. And this is something we haven't touched on lately, and this is this whole Western tug with the EU and the U.S. involved also along with that. Basically, the NATO countries versus Russia. And one thing that I've said is, you know, I'm not going to support either side of this tug of war, and I'm just waiting for the Ukrainian people to say, no, we don't want part of either of your systems because you both are just wanting power. We want to be neutral, independent, sovereign country. And that's not what the New World Order wants. Definitely when they've got opportunity with try and make order out of chaos, the order as they see it. But I have one here from We Are Change, the bigger story of what is happening right now in Ukraine. So I'm going to go ahead and cue this one up.
The current situation between the U.S.-European newly elected government of Kiev and pro-Russian separatists in the east of Ukraine is looking really bad right now. The current situation, as we know, a couple of days ago, there was a truce, a peace treaty announced between the east and the west, between Russia, Ukraine, the European Union, Germany. They made sure the fighting, the conflict would stop in this very key, important European country. And surprise, the truce has been broken 139 times just on the first day alone. And many people say it is not working and it will not work. We told you this a week ago, February 9th. We made a video saying why the Ukrainian peace talks, which didn't happen, were going to happen, why the Ukrainian peace talks will cause war. We went into great detail telling you how this ceasefire will not work. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to look at the bigger things that are happening behind the scenes. It's a very confusing chess game that's unfolding between Russia, the US, Europe, NATO, in this country, in this European proxy country that's being used and divided and conquered. And of course, everyone's playing chess, but the mainstream media likes to think you're playing checkers. No, it's a lot more complicated than you think. We're going to break down in great detail about what happened here. First of all, Ukraine is stuck in a very horrible situation where thousands of their troops are actually surrounded in a very key important town that the rebels say is theirs, that the Ukrainian government says, no, it's theirs. And they're stuck, and this is where most of the fighting is taking place. Ukraine is also dealing with the issue of people not wanting to fight. The Ukrainian government, just a few weeks ago, getting ready to fight the pro-Russian separatists, spreading propaganda of how they're going to have to fight Russia, started a mass conscription trying to get 50,000 people to join the Ukrainian army to fight the rebels. And of course, the people are fighting back, saying they're sick of the war. They are losing support of the people. Ukraine is also in a horrible economic situation. They're about to default on their debt. They are not energy independent in any way, shape, or form. Now, energy is huge. This is why the fighting is taking place, not only between these two major forces, but the newly elected pro-Western backed government in Kiev understands that coal, which they get from this region, which is being held by the rebels, is very important to Ukraine. Ukraine is also indebted to Russia for $4.5 billion because they borrowed money for oil to be imported into Ukraine. Ukraine owes $4.5 billion to Russia. They are screwed because they are broke. They cannot pay for the war. They are not energy independent. Now, what's going to happen? Like it does in all these other countries throughout history, and if you look at the foreign policy, who comes in? The IMF. The IMF came in and gave a $17.5 billion loan to Kiev. $17.5 billion. Now, of course, Keebler-Elf, this plutocrat billionaire, George Soros, just during the start of this year, a few weeks ago, was saying how the U.S. should be giving Ukraine $50 billion to go after Russia. And Kiev, the government that was over, the newly elected government that was before overthrown, said, yes, we'll take it. We'll use it right on defense. And George Soros is pretty much saying, give them the money so they could fight Russia for you. That's what George Soros, a man whose organizations were a part of overthrowing the original government in Kiev, is trying to do. Now, why are they doing this? And of course, we're seeing all the things behind the scenes that are not being reported on the news. Very important key developments with this loan agreement by the IMF. One specific detail that's in there is saying that Ukraine has to open up their biotech farming and sell off their land to private hands. What happens? Right before the loan comes into hand, Ukraine changes the law that banned private sector land ownership in the country. They now overturn that law. This new loan or crack loan came in by the IMF. They're changing the laws. Monsanto has just set up a new firm in Ukraine, and many people are saying Ukraine agrees to Monsanto land grab for $17 billion. Now, this situation gets uglier because we know the IMF, whenever they do come in, they buy up all the land. They control the laws. They control the rules. They control the economics, and they do it in the favor of the very few. People like Soros, corporations like Monsanto. It's a land grab. Now, of course, Russia heard this news too, that $17.5 billion was just given by the IMF. The IMF also has a policy strictly forbidding giving money to a country that's at war, but they also let that one go and agreed to give Ukraine $17.5 billion. Russia hears about this, and they're like, are you going to pay us back? Because you owe us $4.5 billion. And of course, the EU answers back saying, no, there's no guarantee that we're going to pay you back. Even though Ukraine now has the money to pay you back, we're not going to pay you back. And of course, this is not going to help the truth in any way, shape, or form, because the European Union is saying, screw you. We don't care if Ukraine owes you money. We're going to give them money anyway. They have enough money to pay you, but no. And of course, this pisses off Russia. And just a few hours ago, they are conducting military drills in the Mediterranean, flexing their military might and having their troops ready on alert. And as we reported last week, NATO is also getting their troops on alert in this region, being ready to go to fight this conflict. Poland in the region is seeing everything unfolding behind the scenes, and they are declaring that they're going to spend $42 billion in the next decade, spending it on military. Because, of course, the military-industrial complex has to survive and thrive. And the main...
Okay, I'm going to stop that there. This was posted February 17th, and then I previously mentioned an article where the U.S. military, I don't know if it was some part of NATO or I don't know, but it was U.S. military troops on a border town parading their military tanks and stuff in the parade right next to the Russian border. What you also see right now is itchiness for on part of Israel to go after Iran. And Russia and Iran are basically, they're the evil partners, which I don't claim them to be good people. I don't see really any government as good people. And that's the point. We can play sides, but we're all kind of getting screwed in this deal. And the confrontation between these sides is basically heading towards a world war, but also a war on the people by their governments, whether it be over in the EU or Russia or Ukraine. We're seeing more of devastation for a lot of people, except for the ones in power, the ones that claim they're there to help you, which we know basically is a lie. And the reason I wanted to get into this again, that was We Are Change. It's one of those things that when we see all of this heading up, we have to look at what's going on with our foreign policy. How is this going to affect us? And what we're seeing is a attack basically on Russia and its abilities to continue to prosper, knowing that they're hoarding gold. They do sit on oil. Gaining Ukraine limits their ability to transport their oil. Therefore, it'd be cheaper for oil companies to invest more domestically. When you start looking at how everything's kind of connecting, they don't want these countries, to topple the petrodollar. And this also goes down to power in general. He mentioned coal. Coal's a big factor. And the rebels are sitting basically on top of a lot of the coal mining territory. And without that coal, it puts Ukraine still in a tight spot. Um, they need control of that coal because otherwise they're still dependent on the oil that they're trying to control. If they can have the coal, it gives them more freedom of movement to tax and profit off of the oil. Which, if you're going to say, there should be profit made off of oil, well, who's maintaining it and whose land is it? And are they maintaining it or are they causing harm to others and their rights? And I think that's kind of where it lies. And you go, well, it's going through our country. So you're propping up government that also taxes you. What you should be calling for is, since you don't tax them, don't tax me either. Not because you tax me, you should be taxing them. No. No. But it definitely is something that they want, that those coal reserves. That helps them play other cards. Also, they understand what Russia, China are trying to do. Let me see if I have this. I'm hoping I bookmarked it. Let's see here. I had an article up. I'm thinking I probably end up not bookmarking it. But it was just about a billboard that was seen. I'm trying to remember, that's why I need the article. It wasn't here, but it basically was an article claiming a new world currency. It was a Chinese billboard. I can't find it now. But basically, Russia and China have been working towards a new currency, world currency, as in, the petrodollar, but they're willing to call it a world currency. We don't call the American dollar a world currency, but then you think about it, well, you can take the American dollar, and a lot of foreign people over in other countries will accept American money. We're not like that here in America. We want the Federal Reserve note. You better have Federal Reserve. Well, you can do credit cards and stuff like that, but if it's going to be in cash form, you want that Federal Reserve note. You don't want no Canadian bank note or French. Most people are like, no, I want it in American dollar. But you go overseas, they tend to be a little bit different. They'll take American, and I personally haven't been over, but I know plenty of people that have, and they said they did get, some of the foreign currency, but they found that they were able to spend American money too. So, what that truly means, I think it just means that it kind of, in a way, is the beginnings of world currency, and I think they're working on that even more now. And I'm going to go into kind of I'm not sure what direction I want to go here right off bat. Um, we'll kind of get into the internet and how that's being managed to possibly censor us. We don't know exactly what's going to come out of the FCC and how they're going to attempt to regulate the internet and the ISPs, and how, you know, them regulating the ISPs means exactly what is where the problem lies. I got quite a few things covering that. That also leads into some other news I have, and give me a second here. I didn't get a chance to print everything off, so I'm trying to open up the ones I didn't. It's taking a little time to load here. Huh. Okay, here we go. Um, one of them I have is on Amazon, and the other one I have is on Netflix. And this kind of it relates to the tech world completely, but I also had something from Mark Cuban. I'm wondering if I accidentally closed that before I bookmarked it. Thinking I did. Looks like I probably did. Darn it. I'll have to try to find it. Darn it. Okay, well, I'll just get into these two. One out of Business Insider, this 5-minute presentation will convince you that Amazon is screwed. NYU professor Scott Galloway gave a 15-minute presentation on the four biggest companies in tech: Amazon, Facebook, Google, and Apple. The full presentation, which we saw on Josh Brown's website, is worth watching, but the 5 minutes spent on Amazon are the most interesting. It's hard to watch the Amazon part and not feel as if Amazon is going to be in trouble in the next few years. And really, what he gets into is the fact that people are going to not rely on the internet wholly anymore. That they're starting to want the companies that are giving them a full internet experience with the best deals and um, the ability to go to the store and look at something. And if you buy things off the internet at all, there's quite a few times that you'll get something and be like, okay, this is not what I thought I was buying. The description is very misleading, and this is definitely not what I thought I was getting. Um, so, people want to be able to go, I don't think I want to buy that online. I think I'll go to a store. And there's a lot of brick and mortar places that are slowly really getting their whole online presence kind of in gear. And one is Walmart. I think the main problem with Walmart is their store selection, because they do try to carry a little bit of everything, that they only have a little bit of everything. They never seem to have, you know, the eggs and the bacon, which they do. But I'm saying, as a figure of speech, you go there usually for something quick. You walk in and, well, they'll have one thing you need, but they won't have the other. And it just becomes a hassle to even go there. Well, I think that's the main issue with Walmart. They've definitely widened their selection of different things, but they've narrowed their selection of, specific departments. And I think that's where it's going to come down to the best companies that can be brick and mortar while being a major online presence. And, one thing about a lot of these companies is they're trying to build their systems to also include outside purchasing. I don't know if they're doing it in an affiliate way where they can put it on their website and sell it through their website through the same store that's handling their warehouse, able to kind of embed that affiliate link to the item that you're looking for. But a lot of these companies are attempting to do that too. And I think Amazon still has a chance, but they're going to have to adapt. And they're going to have to do it a little quicker than. And I did hear one person before talk about there should be little Amazon Express stores. And I kind of understood his concept, but I think it would be too much overhead with not enough profit. And that was just being where there would be little express stores where you can pick up your items. I think you would have to go towards a store. And kind of what I imagine is a glorified pawn shop slash mart, where there's bricks and mortars that they carry used things that are of high quality and new things, and used as is. But I want to play part of this. I might let it play through, but this presentation he gave, it's really interesting. And let's see that one. Huh. Give me a second here. see if I can cut down to the 5 minutes. Might take me a second here, guys. Okay. Okay, here we go.
Employee that blows away any country. If these four companies got together and created a society for their employees, it would look like something out of Elysium, the movie with Matt Damon. Let's kick off and talk about Amazon. We believe that pure play retail is going away, that e-commerce companies are either going to open stores or go out of business, and retailers need to be either excellent at digital or they will go out of business. I also believe that Amazon cannot survive as a pure play retailer. There's evidence everywhere. Fab raises $250 million at a billion-dollar valuation. 14 months later, it's sold for $15 million. I believe Fab, Gilt, Net-a-Porter are all fantastic companies that once the venture capital community falls out of love with their magnetic founders and they no longer have access to cheap capital, they will discover their business models don't work and go out of business. Or they will open stores. And the majority of them are running to open stores. Stores are the new black in the world of e-commerce. We've discovered these incredibly flexible, robust warehouses called stores. So Rent the Runway, Warby Parker, and a variety of pure plays are now opening stores. The most impressive of which, Warby Parker, whose sales are second in the U.S. per square foot, just behind Apple and just ahead of Tiffany. Retailers are not befuddled prey waiting around to get disrupted. They, in fact, are growing their e-commerce businesses. This is a list of retailers that are growing their e-commerce businesses faster than Amazon. You might think Amazon's the most innovative company in retail. Over the last 10 years, that might be true. But if you look at the last 5 years, it's been Macy's from a shareholder standpoint, and Amazon has had the lowest return of almost every major retailer in the U.S. over the last year. This is the returns of the biggest retailers in Europe, which you can take away that European retail has failed its investors. The strategy of Amazon is a last man strategy to a last mile strategy, or last man standing, a multi-billion-dollar investment in last mile through incredible fulfillment infrastructure, hoping that other retailers have to follow them and then run out of oxygen because no other retailer has access to the same cheap capital as Amazon. However, we have revealed an Achilles heel of Amazon's heel, and that is their shipping costs are exploding 40% a year. And over the last 9 months, they've gone up more than 40%, which is not sustainable even for Amazon. Their shipping fees, or what they took in for shipping, was $3 billion, but they spent almost $7 billion on transportation costs. This is not sustainable. It's a race to the bottom. They forced everybody else to offer free shipping. 2/3 of Christmas packages were brought to you free. It used to be 1/3. That happened in just 12 months. Some of their differentiation, one-click ordering, and incredible same-day fulfillment, I believe those points of differentiation are being eroded by on-demand payment and on-demand delivery, or specifically, I think, likely the disruptive force for Amazon, who's been the most disruptive force in retail in America, is going to be Uber. And it came to me when I took an Uber ride in southern Florida, and it was $4. In Chicago, you can hire a car and a driver for 90 cents a mile. If you spent the same amount on Amazon as Amazon did on its shipping services, that's 7 billion miles of flexible delivery in the U.S. This is a heat map of BlaBlaCar, and it's usually showing carpooling.com, and it's usually showing people carpooling all over Germany. And what I see are not people sharing cars. I see flexible work staff without brown or yellow DHL uniforms who are going to be delivering packages. This guy is about to disrupt Amazon, in our view. The other big trend in retail is something pretty boring people don't talk about: click and collect, ordering online, picking up in store. It ends up that stores are fantastic and flexible warehouses. 2/3 of Europeans have tried this before. In the U.S., we're well behind. Pickup points for online orders, drive-through pickup points in France have exploded from 1 to 3,000 just in the last year. Also, stores are using their brick and mortar locations for flexible warehouses. If you order a flat screen TV from Best Buy, it will now get there faster than if you order from Amazon because they're using their local store as the warehouse to fulfill. The retailer of the future is not Amazon, it's Macy's that has multi-channel retail. Macy's is a metaphor for what's happening not only in retail but in our larger economy. They're closing 15 stores, reinvesting $2 billion in online commerce. Most of these jobs are going away. They're $40,000 to $80,000 sales jobs and being replaced by $20,000 to $40,000 factory and fulfillment jobs. It's a larger metaphor for the economy where we're losing middle-class jobs, some services jobs going away, some growth in healthcare and education, some fantastic new jobs for people in the information economy. But where the real job growth is low-wage, on-demand services. The smartphone economy is going to be outstanding for employment. It's going to be terrible for wages. Some predictions: Amazon will decline in value. Amazon will make a transformative brick-and-mortar acquisition in the next 12 months because they have no choice. Pure play does not work. Top candidates: Radio Shack. My favorite is I think they will buy a gas station company and use gas stations that are decreasing in their importance such that people can pick up their orders, or they may in fact buy or invest in the U.S. Post Office. And the music is stopping for pure play e-commerce companies. Let's talk about Facebook. Facebook has redefined the taxonomy.
Okay. I'm going to stop it right there. Oh, excuse me, I had a sneeze there. Now, there's a thing, though, that Amazon has a framework that really still kind of conquers, I believe, on the internet when it comes to finding things. The ability to find things that you can't find in other places a lot of times, even eBay or whatever, a lot of times it's Amazon that you end up finding it. Now, them buying a brick and mortar, again, I heard someone mention just a, pickup point, and I think they're going to have to go a little bit bigger than just a pickup point. The majority of it's going to have to be pickup, but they need to keep it small, but not too small, where they can carry some of the most popular things that they sell. Enough showroom to be able to do that, but not really much more than that. More warehousing that they can get things. And said something about U.S. Post. I don't think they'll go U.S. Post. I think they'll find one of the postal services that, other than the U.S. Postal Service, of course, one of the private ones that aren't doing too well compared to the others, and basically invest in buying them. Kind of the same way Walmart keeps its shelves stocked by having their own warehousing. I see them looking at some type of postal service as not a delivery for, warehouse to warehouse, but a complete set up already delivery system where all they have to do is go in and tweak it to make it more efficient. And having a system already established and delivering packages throughout the world where they can go in and tweak it is something I think that would be devastating to any of these other companies that are brick and mortar. Personal thought, it would be more profitable to basically have the shipping market dominated for uh, your warehousing. But, brick and mortar, I think, when you're in front of the internet already so much, or a computer, a lot of jobs anymore, even automotive, or um, a lot of these people are running into, building smart houses, and those are becoming more popular among the trendy people. And people want interaction. Like, I'm tired of looking at a computer. I want to interact with people. I want to go out and get outside of my house. It's kind of reminiscent of how the government interacts with the market. The internet has become extremely prosperous, and it's really, this bubble's gotten big again, and government wants to come in and siphon off of it. What they'll end up doing is popping the bubble like they usually do. It dates back to the Dust Bowl. Grow wheat, grow wheat, grow wheat, and suck the soil dry. And it always ends in bad for you, great for them. And I think with the internet, what they're going to do is that they're going to basically control information. I don't think the internet's going to hurt so much people like Amazon, any of these companies. I think it's going to hurt the little guys trying to come up, definitely when it comes to information sharing. That is where I think that's headed. But one company that has been kind of butting heads with some of the other bigger broadcasting companies has been Netflix. Well, this out of Reason.com, Netflix may already regret its support for the FCC's new net neutrality rules. And I'm going to read part of this, and then there's a clip I'm going to play too. Over at Wired, the executive director of the International Center for Law and Economics has one of the very best critical takes on the Federal Communications Commission's decision last week to overhaul the way broad internet is regulated in order to enforce net neutrality rules. Maine makes a couple points that are worth repeating. And it's Geoffrey Maine. He's the executive director at International Center for Law and Economics. The first is the new regulations give the agency license to go far beyond what supporters of the Title II net neutrality regime have said is necessary, and in doing so may actually inhibit more valuable and effective consumer protection regulations from the Federal Trade Commission. You were sold a bill of goods when analysis told you net neutrality was all about protecting the next Facebook from evil ISPs. Think about it. If you're the next Facebook, who do you think is more worried about you, your ISP or Facebook itself? And I think I read this from another article Wednesday, but it goes on to say that, Netflix may already be regretting its decision. Well, yeah, if you're a little company, you best bet if you supported this, and when I say little, Netflix, even though it's kind of popular, a lot of people don't like it because, well, you can't get the stuff fast enough. They want it the day after. And that's where a lot of these companies keep their control. I'm not going to go ahead and play this clip, but I'll go on to something else. But I have one here from We Are Change that I'll play. And the threat against internet freedom worldwide. And we know, places like China try to censor their internet. I think hackers in the long run are going to play a valuable tool in making the ability for people that aren't quite, that technically skilled will be profitable. And I think time's running out for anything like that. But I think ways around a system are one of the most valuable tools for a free society. That way, the flow of information isn't censored where you can get every side of the story. You're not getting propagandized into only one, side of the story and being influenced that way. But I'm going to play this here. We Are Change on YouTube, wearechange.org. Check them out. Okay, here we go.
This is James Corbett, CorbettReport.com, joined today in Acapulco, Mexico, with Dan Dix of PressForTruth.ca and Luke Rudkowski of WeAreChange.org. Today we're going to be talking about something that affects all three of us. Dan, of course, in Canada, Luke in America, myself in Japan. That is the pressing dangers to internet freedom in legislation that has either just been passed or is being passed or wants to be passed in all three of these countries. We're going to start with Dan talking about what's happening in Canada. I know you've been covering this recently. What are the latest threats to internet freedom in Canada?
Well, the latest one that's threatening us right now is Bill C-51. This was actually introduced back in 2011, but prior to 2011, it was under the guise of trying to stop internet pornography and on children. So it was under that guise, but when that didn't work and didn't pass through, they switched up the game and switched it to Bill C-51. 3 years have passed. It's still not going to fly. So now that the Canadians are getting involved in fighting terrorism abroad, now we've brought this onto us. So this is why they're trying to pass this on now. Bill C-51, whisk it through in the face of all the current terrorism going on to restrict the rights of people such as us. This thing is going to restrict our abilities to be able to communicate with one another. It'll give the intelligence communities, the intelligence agencies, the ability to preemptively stop us from doing things if they suspect that we may be involved in some sort of terrorism activities. So this is detrimental for Canadians, so that it's incredibly important to stand up for this. As you said, this is not only happening in Canada, it's going on all over the world right now.
And, of course, playing the terror card in order to clamp down on freedom. No stranger to the U.S. situation, where Luke Rudkowski, of course, is reporting on the latest dangers in Congress regarding this type of legislation. What's going on there?
Well, of course, we know Congress tried to pass SOPA and PIPA. They failed, luckily, but they still try to throw their legislation in other bigger pieces of legislation, which makes it virtually impossible to really get through everything. But Congress has not been yet successful in censoring the internet. But Obama, during his State of the Union, he said we have to protect our children from cyber terrorism. And what he's trying to pass is this new executive order on cyber legislation, cyber security, that will ultimately make it illegal to even view documents that are classified. So if you get shared documents. Someone gives you and emails you documents, just like the Snowden leaks or all these other documents that the government doesn't want you to see, that they don't officially leak themselves, which they do sometimes when it looks good in their favor. If you are a receiver of those documents, you face 10 years in jail and a $100,000 penalty. So Obama's trying to ram through these laws since Congress has failed, and he's doing it under the guise of protecting our children from cyber terrorism, which is obviously pieces of lying crap. So.
Of course, and that sounds extremely familiar to those who are familiar with the Japanese law. It was just passed in last December, which also criminalizes the reception of any material that the government deems classified or secret by journalists. So for the first time, criminalizing real journalism in Japan, although there isn't much there anyway because of the club system that they have in place to basically limit any type of journalism that goes on there. But of course, we all know, unfortunately, all too well about the problems. The question is, what about the solutions? Luke, you bring up SOPA and PIPA, which of course was not successful in being passed a couple of years ago, but of course it's the war of attrition. They keep bringing it back. The question is this something that we're going to get blocked legislatively, or is there a more fundamental level at which we can be attacking this? Luke, your thoughts?
Well, one thing that we know is that the system, the powers that be, always take 2 steps forwards and 1 step back. This is their step back, but they're going to make 2 steps forwards. So we have to be aware of what's happening within our kind of legal political system and bring attention to it. Just this mere fact of other people being aware of this made sure that this bill would not pass. Our attention and what we focus on and what we want, it's a constant tug of war between the powers that be and the people who are supposedly represented by the government. So I've never been a fan of lobbying politicians. I've never been a fan of asking criminals for help with crime, because you're going to get more crime, and the government always finds, out of a problem, a solution that only works out better for them, which creates more problems. I believe in spreading attention. I believe in people innovating new technologies, new encryptions, new kind of outlets that kind of bypass the old system. So I'm really optimistic because we've seen so many people, whenever a government creates a roadblock, bam, they always create a different way around it. We've seen that in the Bitcoin community. We've seen that in the encryption community. We're learning every day about what's safe and what's not safe. So again, to me, empower yourself with knowledge. Don't seek answers from the criminals creating the problems, but seek answers from your community, your people, and all the innovators. And especially with all this advance in technology, the government is having a very hard time at, creating all these laws to stop the free flow of information. So I'm optimistic. I don't think they will be successful, but we have to be alert. And the only way they can't be successful if we give it our attention and fight it as best as we can by spreading the information as wide as we can.
You bring up good points. Technology always the double-edged sword. If they try to use it against us, there are people who will find ways to use it against them as well, which is exactly what this free internet media is all about. But also, you bring up the point that it was the mass mobilization that happened around things like SOPA and PIPA that made the blockage of that legislation possible because of the mass awareness. It's one of the few issues. 14 years of occupation of Afghanistan, 1 million dead Iraqis, all these things don't matter to people, but talk about censoring the internet and people get up in arms. How about in Canada? Is this one of those touchstone issues that people care about in that degree?
Not enough. The problem in Canada is that not enough people are really aware that this is even an issue in the first place. So I think in our case, awareness is absolutely key. I put out a video about this back in 2011, ranting and raving and screaming to people, we got to do something about this. And I didn't get very much of a response about that at all. Now that it's more prominent and it's in the news and it's in the mainstream, people are starting to pay a little bit more attention. If they had paid attention back in 2011, perhaps we wouldn't be here now. So I really think awareness is key at this point. So some of the things we have to continue to do are things like we're doing right now. Put this information out there. Let people know that their rights are being taken away from them online, and unless they do something about it, nothing's going to change.
Also, the old phrase "use it or lose it" comes to mind because, again, it's one of those things that it is a muscle, and the more you flex it, the stronger it becomes. And in that regard, thinking of all of the ways that this technology can be used and is sorely underutilized by a lot of the public out there. Obviously, citizen media like We Are Changed, like Press for Truth, like hopefully the Corbett Report are ways that anyone out there, literally in the audience who is listening to this, who can make a video, who can do a podcast, who can put out a video, or who can even share this information with others, is doing something to help in this regard. And also, we've got to keep using the internet for what it's for, which is spreading of freedom and truth. And cat videos if you want, but make sure that there's a bit of freedom and truth in there. All right, Luke, any final thoughts on this issue?
You said it perfectly. The internet and technology and information is like a muscle. If we don't use it, we're going to become weak, pathetic little slime bags. But if we use it, we empower ourselves, nothing is impossible. The future of society at large is within our hands. They're trying to take away this amazing moment in history that we never had before, but they won't be successful unless we stand up for our rights and be vocal about it.
Dan, any words of encouragement for Canadians out there teetering on the fence?
Now is the time to get involved. If you're not excited about getting into exposing these issues, now is the time. I mean, things are ramping up like exponentially. So I just encourage you, if you've never done this before, if you're just getting into this, dive in head first and start making changes. Go online, get a YouTube channel, start posting on Facebook, get a Twitter account, get this information out there. Whatever you can do, just dive head in.
And my Japanese brothers and sisters, you're at the forefront of a lot of this censorship as well. So please follow this advice and start getting the word out about these incredible issues. This is James Corbett in Acapulco, Mexico, with Luke Rudkowski of We Are Change and Dan Dix of Press for Truth.
Again, you can find that We Are Change on YouTube, wearechange.org. Now, that's one of the most important things is the ability for information to flow. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not going to get misinformation on the internet. People always go, "Oh yeah, believe what you read on the internet or watch on the internet." And I go, "Yeah, and believe what you watch on TV and hear on the radio and read in a book." Because we're always told lies and truths. And it's really up to each individual to educate themselves, read into a topic from every angle that it's observed and talked about, and find the evidence that supports things. And where there's a lack of evidence from any side, you have to make your own conclusion about that. But you have to educate yourself and really look deep into things. And I think that's also a problem with society too, is they like to stay comfortable. And if they start looking at something and they start figuring out the truth, and that truth makes them uncomfortable, sometimes you either run back to try to forget and not learn anything else, or you get deeper and deeper and deeper involved in. I think the more that people start looking into things, the more aware people are becoming. Now, when it comes to the answer, I don't think any one person has a perfect answer. I don't have a perfect answer. But we understand that, well, a lot of people understand that a flawed person rolling over another flawed person does not help anything out. Someone claiming authority over another person when they haven't done anything to harm anyone, victimless crimes. When you really think about it, when you really get deep down, does a speed limit stop someone from speeding? No, but they can get pulled over. Okay, does that stop them from speeding the next time, the next day, on the way home? Does it do anything to prevent it? No. Well, then why do we promote it and promote cops pulling people over, giving them a ticket, and taking money from them when they haven't harmed anybody? And because people less likely be, well, I don't know anybody that really does the speed limit. If they do, half of the time they're doing under the speed limit. They're not even reaching the speed limit. But for probably 90% of the traffic I encounter on the road, if not 97, 98% of the traffic I encounter on the road are speeding. Usually, it's if you don't break that, depending on where you are, 5, 10 mile an hour with the speed limit, you never get pulled over. It's usually 5 towards the end of the month. It's an arbitrary line that, does not really affect it. And they go, because it'll stop them from speeding, that puts people's lives in danger. Well, does that really dictate the speed they go? Dictate, well, yeah, someone doing 80 is going to kill someone. Well, people doing 30 kill people too. They could run over a kid. Yeah, and they do at slow speeds. You start picking holes in that argument, and it's not really trying to pick holes in someone else's argument to make them look stupid. It's just, believe me, I understand your feeling about things, but when you start realizing that it doesn't really help anything, you start looking at it truly for what it is a revenue collecting tactic, and also a way to show authority over people. Listen, if you don't do what I tell you to do, I'll take your money, and if you keep doing it, I'll take your ability to drive away, or I'll revoke your privilege to drive, and if I catch you driving, I'll put you in jail. It's a show of force, and a way of paying for that is the revenue collection from it. Government's not exactly good at protecting you. I wanted to read this from Zero Hedge. Most Americans are slaves and they don't even know it. Again, zerohedge.com. Most Americans spend their lives working for others, paying off debts to others, and performing tasks that others tell them they must do. These days, we don't like to think of ourselves as servants or slaves, but that is what the vast majority of us are. It is just the mechanism of our enslavement have become much more sophisticated over time. It has been said that the borrower is the servant of the lender, and most of us start going into debt very early into our adult years. In fact, those that go to college get an education are likely to enter the real world with a staggering amount of debt, and of course, that is just the beginning of the debt accumulation. Today, when you add up all mortgage debt, all credit card debt, and all student loan debt, the average American household is carrying a grand total of $203,163 of debt overall. American households are more than $11 trillion in debt at this point, and even though most Americans don't realize this, over the course of our lifetime, the amount of money that we will repay on our debts is far greater than the amount that we originally borrowed. In fact, when it comes to credit card debt, you can easily end up repaying several times the amount of money that you originally borrowed. So we work our fingers to the bone to pay off these debts, and the vast majority of us are not even working for ourselves. Instead, our work makes the businesses that other people own more profitable. So if we spend the best years of our lives building businesses for others, servicing debts that we owe to others, and making others wealthier, what does that make us? In 2015, the word servant and slave have very negative connotations, and we typically don't use them very much. Instead, we use words like employee because they make us feel much better. But is there really that much of a difference? This is how Google defines servant: a person who performs duties for others, especially a person employed in a house on domestic duties or as a personal attendant. This is how Google defines an employee: a person employed for wages or salary, especially a at non-executive level. Yes, most of us might not be legal property of someone else in a very narrow sense, but in a broader sense, we all have to answer to someone. We all have someone that we must obey, and we all have obligations that we must meet or else face the consequences. At this point, Americans are more dependent on the system than ever before. Small business ownership in the U.S. is at a record low, and the percentage of Americans that are self-employed has fallen to unprecedented levels. In recent years, from a very early age, we are trained to study hard so that we can get a good job, just over broke, and be good cogs in the system. But is that what life is about? Is it about being a cog in a system that ultimately benefits others? Perhaps you don't think that any of this applies to you personally. Well, if someone came up to you and asked you what you truly own, what would you say? Do you own your vehicle? Most Americans don't. In fact, today the average auto loan at signing is approximately $27,000, and many of them stretch on for 6 or 7 years. What about your home? Do you own it? Most Americans don't. In fact, overall, the banks have much greater ownership interest in our homes and our land than we do. But even if you have your home totally paid off, does that mean you actually own it? Well, no, not really. Just see what happens if you quit paying your property taxes, rent to other proper authorities, or to the proper authorities. So if they can take your home away from you for not paying rent, property taxes, do you really own it? That is something to think about. What about all your stuff? Do you own it? Perhaps, but a very large percentage of us have willingly enslaved ourselves in order to acquire all that stuff. Today, the typical U.S. household has at least one credit card, has approximately $15,950 in credit card debt. And if you do not pay those credit card balances, the credit card companies will unleash the hounds on you. Have you ever had an encounter with the debt collector? They can be absolutely brutal, and if you use those tactics, and they use those tactics because they work. In fact, they are so good at what they do that many of those that own debt collection companies have become exceedingly wealthy. The following is from a recent CNN article. Yachts, mansions, extravagant dinner parties. Life is good for the founders of one of the nation's biggest government debt collectors. That firm, Linebarger, Goggin, Blair, and Sampson rakes in big money from government contracts that allows it to pursue debtors over toll violations, taxes, parking tickets. While the debts often start small, the Austin-based firm charges high fees, which can add hundreds or even thousands of dollars to the bill. After growing this business from a small Texas law firm in the late 1970s to a nationwide debt collection powerhouse, the firm's founders and top brass have walked away with millions of dollars. And I haven't even mentioned our collective debts yet. We have willingly chosen to collectively enslave ourselves on a local, a state, and a national level. It is bad enough that we are doing this to ourselves, but we are also cruelly saddling future generations of Americans with the largest mountain of debt in the history of the planet. The following is from the previous article entitled Barack Obama Says that what America really needs is lots more debt. When Barack Obama took the oath of office, the U.S. national debt was $10.6 trillion. Today, it has surpassed the $18 trillion mark. And even though we have been told that deficits are going down, the truth is that the U.S. national debt increased by more than $1 trillion in fiscal 2014. But that isn't good enough for Obama. He says that we need to come out of this period of mindless austerity and steal money from our children and grandchildren even faster. In addition, Obama wants to raise taxes again. His budget calls for $2 trillion in tax increases over the next decade. He always touts these tax increases as tax hikes on the rich, but somehow they almost always seem to end up hitting the middle class too. But whether or not Congress ever adopts Obama's new budget is not really the issue. The reality of the matter is that the tax and spend Democrats and the tax and spend Republicans are both responsible for getting us into this mess. Future generations of Americans are already facing the largest mountain of debt in the history of the planet, and both parties want to make the mountain of debt even higher. The only disagreement is about how fast it should happen. It is a national disgrace, but most Americans have come to accept this as normal. If our children and our grandchildren get the opportunity, they will curse us for what we have done to them. Again, that was out of zerohedge.com. That was titled Most Americans Are Enslaved and They Don't Even Know It. And that was by Tyler Durden. And, you know, this really kind of scratches on the surface of what I talk about on this broadcast a lot. And the thing is we curse previous generations for allowing it to get where it is. And we have to also realize that the majority of the populace is constantly manipulated, and he's right when he talks about we accept as a norm because we kind of grow up, you know. Definitely any of the recent generations that, you know, if you're in your 30s, you know, the having debt is not something that is out of the normal, but the extent of our debt. And when you get older and more educated, you start realizing what that really means. That doesn't mean these government officials, these rich people are going to have debt. This means that you that are stuck here in America because you don't have money to move to the next country or part of the world that allows you to prosper, they do. Um, you'll get stuck with it. And another attack on your ability to have any wealth when you go to retire. NewYorkPost.com, NYPost.com. White House looking to creep into 401ks. Last Monday, when Elizabeth Warren, Democrat from Massachusetts, at his side, President Obama attacked Wall Street again for essentially helping in what federal government and business can no longer provide a decent retirement. Under the false pretense of calling for new and tougher so-called fiduciary standards and financial brokers, advisors, and retirement plan representatives, the White House once again horned in on Wall Street's compensation formulas. However, what the president surely knows is that a vast majority of retirement plans, IRAs, and 401ks are in simple fee-based products like mutual funds. The commission-based accounts are for those who prefer to direct their brokers in certain purchases inside some of their retirement products. The key to the White House's interference is in its nuanced language. Currently, a broker may make a recommendation that must be suitable for retirement account assets such as 401ks and IRAs. However, the president wants to take it a step further and mandate that it be in the investor's fiduciary best interest. The administration surely knows that commission rates and fees on Wall Street have never been better for the consumer, and to pretend to be able to offer even cheaper rates seems disingenuous. It also opens a huge can of worms. What if an investor who has been successful with Apple wants to buy 100 or more shares of tech giant for his or her self-directed IRA? Does the administration really want a broker to interfere because, in the broker's opinion, it is in the best interest of the investor? It's all about control. It's your money, America. The system functions quite well. Adding your pages of red tape will not improve performance, but it just may get your broker to drop your account, just as many credit lines were closed after Dodd-Frank passed. Many on Wall Street and non-political economists feel one of the things holding back our economy is the ever-increasing creep of socialism and added regulation into our finances. Just look at the mandated, innocuous sounding Affordable Care Act, aka Obamacare. At its passage in 2010, we were promised a savings of $2,500 per family. Well, look what happened. The average annual cost of health insurance premium for family coverage was $13,770 in 2010. In 2014, it was $16,000. That's about $3,834, according to the Kaiser Family Foundation. That's a 22.25% increase in 4 years. Additionally, the average deductible for single coverage jumped from $917 to $1,217, an increase of 32.71%, and out-of-pocket prescription costs and copay rose as well. Remember how Dodd-Frank was going to change banking for the better for the consumer and help the middle class get improved treatment? Well, in the world of government outreach, it's always the average Joe who gets hurt. Look no further than the checking and bank fees that eat into your accounts month in, month out. In 2009, 76% of banks offered a checking account with no minimum balance and no monthly fee. Today, only 38% do, according to Bankrate. Meanwhile, the minimum account balance to qualify for no-fee checking at banks has skyrocketed to $6,118 per the Heritage Foundation. Oh, and it's a lot harder and more costly for the average American to get a mortgage today. So much for government intervention. Furthermore, there are very few stories about brokers absconding with 401k or IRA funds, which was one of the reasons noted for this vague and misleading regulatory rule. And if there are creeps who try to rip people off, everyone is protected by the FDIC, SIPC, and the SEC and FINRA regulations and insurance. And what about Social Security? Its future remains in question for those in their late 50s and under. And these same DC denizens want to run our private retirement accounts. Come on, IRAs and 401ks are the few savings products that actually do work in the country for everyone. IRAs and 401ks are personal retirement accounts, not government pensions. Says, please keep your hand out of our pockets. Again, that one out of New York Post, nypost.com. And like I've said in the past, anytime they see any profit being made, they immediately go after it. And they'll continue to do that because as long as theft is okay, basically, they're going to take advantage of it. Now, one thing I will get into. You have to give me a second here. Okay. I think I got it here. Okay. Now, one thing that was someone asked of me is, if Rand Paul ran for president, would I vote for him? And I basically told him I just don't have any faith of being able to change at the federal level. I think it's at such corrupt level that we have to make changes for liberty at the local level and use alternative means that don't involve the Federal Reserve and tying ourselves to anything federal, including accepting federal funding, in order to protect our freedoms. Now, one thing that I also said is, even voting for someone like him, thinking he could do change, the things that I think he's totally wrong about, or at least the things I think he's expressed. I think he's totally wrong about. There's also a couple other personal things that I've seen that I disliked about him. He's definitely not Ron Paul. Definitely his son. Not too far from the tree, but far enough that I'm definitely not sure exactly who he is. Now, there are quite a few things that I think in his ideology that are extremely important that I would like to see the federal government go in that direction. But again, he's someone I can't completely read. And I don't know who he is. Even though I've studied him, listened to him, I just don't know exactly who he is. But I did want to play. Do we have enough time? Yeah, we have enough time. I'll probably stop it way before the end of it. But Rand Paul, CPAC 2015. Might have to skip an ad here. Okay, here we go.
Thank you. Thank you. There comes a time in the history of nations when fear and forgetfulness cause a nation to hesitate, to waver, and perhaps even to succumb. When that time comes, those who love liberty must rise to the occasion. Will you, lovers of liberty, will you rise to the occasion? When politicians accept censorship, when politicians accept imprisonment without trial, when politicians accept torture, even of the innocent, as necessary, then lovers of liberty must rise. We must rise and stand with our forefathers who stared down the king. We must rise as free men and women and reclaim our birthright. We must protect and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Our freedom is at risk from a Supreme Court that fails to protect liberty. In the mistake of the century, Justice Roberts affirmed the power of the government to force you to buy insurance. Justice Roberts argued that we must presume Obamacare constitutional. I've got a better idea. Why don't we presume liberty? Just as we are presumed innocent, so too we should be presumed free. President Obama's fundamental promise that if you like your doctor, that you can keep them, was a lie. Obamacare, at its very core, takes away a patient's right to choose. I
don't know what the music. I don't know what the music's about, but whatever. It's playing on the video.
To heal the nation, reverse the course of Obamacare, and repeal every last bit of it. We must remember that our rights are unlimited, unenumerated, and given to us by God. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. The Ninth Amendment says that those rights not listed are not to be disparaged. You do have a right to privacy. Your rights are who you are. Your rights are what you are. Your rights are in your DNA, and the government can, quite frankly, get over it. To defend our country, we need to gather intelligence on the enemy. But when the intelligence director lies to Congress, how are we to trust them? Are we to trust them to collect and hold every American's phone records? I say that your phone records are yours. I say that the phone records of law-abiding citizens are none of their damn business. From within, our freedom is threatened by debt and by a government that regulates everything that moves. We borrow $1 million a minute. The president says he doesn't know where to cut. How about we start with the $2.4 million they spent on origami condoms? Don't tell me there's no place to cut. Our freedom is also threatened from outside our borders. We must protect ourselves from jihadists without losing who we are as a people in the process. We must think before we act. We should promote stability, not chaos. In the Middle East, one form of tyranny often replaces another. When secular despots are overthrown, chaos ensues and radical Islam grows stronger. Hillary's war in Libya is a perfect example. Hillary's war made us less safe. Libya is less stable, and radical jihadists run amok. They swim in our swimming pool. Hillary's war in Libya allowed thousands of surface-to-air missiles to fall into the hands of radical Islamists. As Hillary was declaring victory in Libya, Ambassador Stevens was pleading for more security. When I asked Secretary Clinton if she read Ambassador Stevens' cables pleading for help, she answered curtly no, as if she had more important things to do. I believe Hillary Clinton's abdication of responsibility, her refusal to provide an adequate defense for Benghazi, her dereliction of duty should forever preclude her from higher office. It's time for Hillary Clinton to permanently retire. In the Middle East, a dangerous and barbaric cult has arisen. ISIS has become a threat to our embassy in Baghdad and our consulate in Erbil. ISIS, though, grew in a safe haven created by arming Islamic rebels in the Syrian civil war. When I voted against arming the Islamic rebels in Syria, I warned that these arms might end up in the hands of jihadists, and that one day we might be forced to go back to fight against our own weapons. Within a year, that prediction came true. Without question, we must now defend ourselves and American interests from this barbarous aberration. But it troubles me that we must now fight against our own weapons. We need a national defense robust enough to defend against all attacks, modern enough to deter all enemies, and nimble enough to defend our vital interests. But we also need a foreign policy that encourages stability, not chaos. At home, conservatives understand that the government is the problem, not the solution. But as conservatives, we should not succumb to the notion that a government inept at home will somehow become successful abroad. That a government that can't even deliver the mail will somehow be able to create nations abroad. Without question, we must be strong. Without question, we must defend ourselves. I envision an America with a national defense unparalleled, undefeatable, and unencumbered by nation building. I envision a national defense that promotes, as Reagan put it, peace through strength. We must realize, though, that we do not project strength by borrowing money from China to send it to Pakistan. It angers me to see mobs burning our flag and chanting "Death to America" in countries that receive our foreign aid. I say it must end. I say not one penny more to these haters of America. Home, our nation needs new ideas and new answers to old problems. Martin Luther King spoke of two Americas. He described them as two starkly different American experiences that exist side by side. In one America, people experience the opportunity of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. In the other America, people experience a daily ugliness that dashes hope and leaves only the fatigue of despair. I was born into the America that experiences and believes in opportunity. But my trips to Ferguson and Detroit and Atlanta and Chicago have revealed what I consider to be an undercurrent of unease in our country. Liberal policies have failed our inner cities. Liberal policies have failed our poor communities. Our schools are not equal, and the poverty gap continues to widen. It's time for a new way, a way predicated on opportunity and freedom. Those of us who have enjoyed the American dream must break down the wall that separates us from the other America. The president's answer is to raise taxes again. I believe we should do the opposite. I propose we cut everyone's taxes from the richest to the poorest. In the coming weeks, I will propose the largest tax cut in American history. A tax cut that will leave more money in the paychecks of every worker in America. My tax plan will get the IRS out of your life and out of the way of every job creator in America. My plan will also cut spending and balance the budget in just 5 years. To fix Washington, we can't have business as usual. Often bills are plopped on our desk with only a few hours to review. No one, and I mean no one, is able to read what is in the bill. I propose something truly outrageous. Congress should read every bill. Congress should also live under the laws they pass. I have a constitutional amendment that says Congress shall pass no law that exempts themselves. And finally, if they won't listen, we should limit all their terms and send the career politicians packing. And while we're at it, maybe we ought to limit the terms of out-of-control federal judges as well. We need to return to our founding principles, stand up for the entire Bill of Rights. Our future can include a road back to prosperity, back to respect at home and abroad. It should include a balanced budget and a simple, fair tax system. It should include a government that protects your rights and your security. It should include a stronger, better, more agile military. It's time for a new way, a new set of ideas, a new leader, one you can trust, one who works for you, and above all, it's time for a new president. I believe that America has much greatness left, but we must believe in ourselves, believe in our founding documents, believe in the economic system that creates more stuff for more people than at any time in recorded history. American innovations have changed the world for the better. America is an idea factory, and there are ideas yet to be born. You and your friends create those ideas. You are America's greatest hope, America's dream. Our best days are ahead of us. It is not the desire for wealth that drives us. What drives us is the desire for freedom. The history of man is the history of men and women striving to restrain the power of government and expand the realm of freedom. Will you stand with me? Will you fight for freedom? Will you vote for freedom?
Okay, I'm going to stop it there. I think the one thing about Rand Paul is he does have a lot of support from old-time Ron Paul supporters. Not all of them. A lot of us have become really, I would say, a little bit harder core libertarians. And it's out of our own experience with, the arguments we make against, let's say, welfare for the benefit of society and the nation. And well, you can basically, throw your argument out there, which it's a legitimate argument, but a lot of people would defend, tax people for the defense of the country should be a minimal thing, and if you just tax them for that, no. Because when defense of your country turns out to be something you don't agree with, and let's say Libya, for example, should you be forced to pay taxes for something like that? Of course not. And that's where the main argument comes in. Should you be taxed in the first place? And, if you're a libertarian at all, in your ideology, I'm not saying party-wise, but in your ideology, you would definitely say no. And a lot of people say in the Tea Party would argue that point, try to justify it. And I think he might be banking on the support of all these old-time Ron Paul supporters, along with people he's been trying to please when it comes to other people within the Republican Party, and try to cater to what they want and they believe is good. And I think he's been playing that double-edged sword that really it's again, he might gain people, but he definitely lost people at the same time playing that game. And I think that's where one of the major flaws is. But he still seems to have a pretty decent following. In hindsight of everything, he still has a chance to get the Republican nomination. But I wouldn't bank on it. There's no way you can bank on something like this. See where we are. Okay, we got about 15 minutes. Okay, I had something here from Ben Swan that I wanted to get into. Okay, here we go. This one new study draws connections between water fluoridation and ADHD in children. Says the study comes from the Department of Psychology at Toronto's York University, was published in the Environmental Health Journal. The researchers studied data on ADHD among children aged 4 to 17 collection in 2003, 2007, and 2011 as part of the National Survey of Children's Health, as well as state water fluoridation data from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention collected between 1992 and 2008. It is the first study to analyze the relationship between exposure to fluoridated water and ADHD prevalence. The team discovered children living in areas with the majority of the population receiving fluoridated water from public water systems tended to have greater proportion of children and adolescents diagnosed with ADHD. The researchers concluded that the study has empirically demonstrated an association between more widespread exposure to fluoridated water and increased ADHD prevalence in the United States children and adolescents, even after controlling for social economic status, SES, or something like that. The findings suggest that fluoridated water may be an environmental risk factor for ADHD. Previous studies have shown rats exposed to fluoride chemicals also exhibit ADHD-like symptoms. Other studies have found impaired learning and memory among rats that drank 5 milligrams of sodium fluoride treated water for 6 months or 20 milligrams for 3 months. The paper that further studies are needed to understand advises that further studies are needed to understand the relationship between fluoride exposure and ADHD. ADHD was also prevalent in higher rates for males, children of low socioeconomic status, older children, and for children whose parents had a high school education compared to those parents did not graduate high school. The team also found that fluoridated water is not the only source of fluoride intake for U.S. citizens. As the author notes, the U.S. is one of the most widely fluoridated countries in the world, with approximately 74.6% of the population receiving fluoridated water for the prevention of dental caries. Americans are consuming fluoride in public water systems via the addition of chemicals, including hydrofluoric acid, sodium fluorosate, and sodium fluoride. The study comes on the heels of a study published in the BMJ's Journal of Epidemiology and Community Health, which confirmed fluoride's negative effect on the thyroid gland and possible connection to depression, weight gain, and other negative health effects. Researchers with the University of Kent in England examined thyroid activity for those in areas with fluoridated water and those without. The team examined 95% of the English population in 2012 and 2013 and found high rates of underactive thyroid were 30% more likely in areas with high fluoride concentration, and underactive thyroid can lead to depression, weight gain, fatigue, and aching muscles. The researchers reference a previous study that found exposure to water fluoridated at relatively low concentrations and reduced IQ among children. Based on that study, they believe it's plausible that fluoride is also contributing to attention-related symptoms given its association with lower IQ. Other examples of health problems related to water fluoridation include a 2010 U.S. National Health and Nutrition Survey, which found that approximately 41% of 12-15-year-olds suffer from dental fluorosis, a consequence of fluoride overexposure. Dental fluorosis results in yellowing and pitting of the teeth. For more on the history of fluoride, health issues, and conflicts of interest with the CDC, check this article. And again, I found that at benswan.com. And basically, they're just pointing. No problem there. This just confirms things that we already know, already have been talking about, but a lot of these studies have been able to actually come to the surface now because of the outpour of people talking about it and talking about the studies that were already out there that were linking a lot of these problems, going, there's more than just a coincidence. And I think that's why you also see that it tends to happen more in the city because, well, that's usually where the water sources are fluoridated. People out in the rural areas might have another problem with maybe glyphosates and that, all the spraying of fields around them. Getting into water sources. So, there's a lot of issues that are affecting people, and people are like, yeah, that's why it should be regulated, and, such and such. And I have to stop and go, no, you don't realize it was regulated to get to this point. That's one thing that tends to get missed. And it's monopolies put where they get their pass because government's there to protect them. Or at least a lot of times they think. And not always does it turn out that way. Excuse me. Thought I was going to have to sneeze there for a second. Okay. We look at all this and it's amazing, the names that you get called, and then something comes out like this that coincides with what we've been saying. And are you going to hear anybody apologize? We already know, conspiracy theorists is something that's been put out there and used to try to discredit people. And it's amazing that the so-called conspiracy theorists are usually the ones that tend to be right, because they're the ones that are not stuck in this fallacy box that prevents them from seeing the truth that should be right there in front of them if they're opening their eyes. Okay. Before we end the broadcast, I'll read this quick article from benswan.com. Benghazi committee subpoenas Hillary Clinton's private emails for investigation. And this was posted yesterday. On Wednesday, the House Select Committee investigating the 2012 attacks in Benghazi, Libya, issued subpoenas for the emails of Hillary Clinton, who used her private email account for government business during her 4 years as U.S. Secretary of State. The Washington Post reported that the committee is asking for all emails related to the Benghazi attack from all ClintonEmail.com accounts and any other staff members' personal accounts. The Associated Press reported that Clinton had a personal email server which could be tracked back to her home in Chappaqua, New York. I don't know how to pronounce it. And that the unusual practice of a cabinet-level official running her own email server would have given Clinton significant control over limiting access to her message archives. Well, yeah, she could delete stuff. Jamal Warr, the committee's communications director, released a statement on Wednesday announcing the committee's decision. The Select Committee on Benghazi today issued subpoenas for all communications of former Secretary of State email Clinton related to Libya and to the State Department for other individuals who have information pertinent to the investigation. The committee also has issued preservation letters to internet firms informing them of their legal obligation to protect all relevant documents. According to the Washington Post, after finding evidence that Clinton was using her personal email address to conduct government business, the committee also found evidence suggesting that at least a small group of Clinton staffers used personal emails to conduct government work and correspond with the secretary. And if you don't know exactly what's going on with the Clinton one, is she had her own server in her own home, which gives her access over to delete things. So basically skirting any responsibility. She can just delete any information. No one else has control. Says here, Representative Elijah Cummings, ranking member of the House Select Committee on Benghazi, defended Clinton, saying that her use of private email has been public knowledge for several years. He said he sees this as an effort to go after Hillary Clinton, period. No, it's hiding information, having complete control over something that's supposed to be for the public good. No. Patrick Peterson, chief executive of the Security Council, Agari, told the LA Times. Thank you all for tuning in. I can't do any more tonight. Tune in next week and stay tuned here on UCY for all the great broadcasts coming up next.
This is Ozzy Skateboard, and you're listening to UCY.tv.